Every day I wake up and I hope I see beautiful basketball. Something like the 2014 Spurs, or the Warriors with Curry, Clay, and Draymond. Something with cutting, off-ball movement, and overall great intelligence. And while I would never compare the 2020 Miami Heat with those two teams, from a stylistic perspective in terms of how they create open shots, they may be the closest thing we have. And right now, they're absolutely humming. Since the NBA restart, they lead the league with 337 passes per game and have a strong 114 offensive rating. They're playing great basketball, so let's get to it. But first, a sponsored message. That's me chilling in the shade, reading National Geographic? No way. I throw a no-look pass to my cat, Bobo, and suddenly, a tablet appears in my hand. I check out Netflix, but I've already seen Uncut Gems once. Okay, maybe twice, but then I remember, I have Surfshark VPN, which allows me to browse the internet as if I was anywhere in the world. And now I can watch my favorite shows such as Parks and Rec and do it right away. That's what Surfshark VPN does for me. It allows me to access blocked content on Netflix and YouTube not available in my area. And plus, as a VPN, it keeps my information private and secure from hackers and bad internet links. And the best part is, if you use my code CoachDaniel, you get an 85% discount plus 3 extra months free. That's insane. Plus, with Surfshark's 30-day money-back guarantee policy, there's no risk at all. Thank you Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video. One area where they do a lot of damage is by playing out of the low and the high post. Here's a good example. They throw it to Iguodala down low, but he's not really looking to score, but instead we get a bit of split action. Olynyk sets the flare screen for Hill, and when he sees Giannis sags off of him, Olynyk pops for an open 3. Using split screens may seem simple, but it's a good concept out of the low post. Here the ball goes inside, Olynyk sets the flare screen, and when the switch is botched and 2 go to Butler, Olynyk is left open. And you don't have to get a shot off of the screen for the split to be effective, meaning here the ball goes inside, Iguodala sets the flare, you have another flare on the weak side by Crowder, and that occupies defenders, so now Dragic has no defensive attention on him, and he can go to work one-on-one. It's the same idea out of the high post, where they do a good job of playing through their bigs. Here, they throw it to Adebayo, and you see Robinson screen away for Hero, and then Hero just needs to read the defense. Here, he gets overplayed, so he cuts backdoor. And here we see them go to the high post when other teams wouldn't. So the Celtics are in their small ball switch everything lineup, and we see a switch on Olynyk's ball screen. And switching can stall out many offenses, but notice how the Heat get it to Olynyk at the high post, and 3 guards are ready to cut off of him, and that's sure to cause defensive confusion. And much of their high post game revolves around Duncan Robinson. They'll get it to the elbow and then have Duncan sprint into a handoff. So what's happened in these first 4 games is Robinson has gotten a ridiculous amount of backdoor layups because teams are just overplaying him. For example, on this play, we see that Matthews is in top lock, denying Robinson to use the screen, so Robinson just cuts backdoor for a layup. And this is a great play that shows the Heat's intelligence. Here we see Duncan is being top locked on the screen, but look at Crowder. He flips his screen, turning it into a back screen, which gives Robinson more of an advantage on his backdoor cut. You know, I think what really urged me to make this video was the off-ball activity, which we've already discussed a bunch, but let's watch some more because they really stand out in this regard. Here, for instance, we have a 2-man game on the strong side, and most other teams would have 3 guys standing still, but look how Crowder sets a flare screen for Robinson, who's out of the picture, and Crowder, by the way, is a really good team offensive player. And then on the short roll when Bam gets it, I mean, the defense just has no chance to collapse on Bam and communicate who has Robinson off of the flare. Another great pass from Bam. Here's a very similar play. We have a pick and roll on top, and naturally the off-ball defenders will have their eyes on the ball, so Iguodala, not being a very good shooter, will make himself useful and set a flare screen for Duncan, and here Duncan is open, but Dragic is already passing to Bam, though fortunately, Iguodala gets the rebound. And this is the same game but a minute later, and here we have a broken play, but look at the awareness by Iguodala to set a hammer screen through all of this, freeing up Duncan. But the most active off-ball player is Duncan Robinson, who of course can run off of screens, but he's also an elite screener. Here we see he sets a back screen for Hero, and because Hill is so attached to him, that frees up Hero on the cut. So I definitely think moving off ball is still an underrated skill, and Miami has several guys such as Butler and Robinson who are just terrific off ball. Here the ball is on top, and we have Robinson and Hero in the wing and the corner, and what they'll do is simply exchange, and what happens is two Nuggets defenders stay low, leaving Hero open, and that results in an open 3 for none. The Heat score off plays like this all the time. And I'm not sure if there's a great stat to demonstrate their activity and movement, but this season they did score 13.7 points per game off cuts, which led the league. Now let's go through a few concepts that the Heat use on offense, quick hitter style. And we'll start with a basic one, the baseline drift. And here's what it is. So Dragic drives along the baseline, and as he looks to make that baseline pass, it's up to Hero to get to the corner to give him an outlet. And this is the baseline drift, getting to the corner on a baseline drive. And this reminded me of a play 8 months ago that happened, where a very similar play, Dragic drives baseline, he's about to make that pass with his left hand, but Hero doesn't drift to the corner, and you can see the value of the baseline drift. That line represents a clear angle to the corner with no defenders, whereas where Hero was standing, there's lots of bodies and the angle isn't as good. And Dragic wasn't happy with the rookie. Let's stay on baseline drives because the Heat also emphasize the slot cut on the baseline drive. So Iguodala drives baseline, and what they want is the person on the opposite wing or slot to cut to the hoop here. And here we see none get it and get fouled. Let's watch this play one more time, and the person to notice here is Van Vliet. He's guarding none, but the reason this cut works so well is because his rotation is to sink to the level of the ball, and that leaves a gap for none to cut through. Also, Butler also cuts, but that's not really what the Heat wants. That's just Butler not wanting to shoot at 3. First of all, terrific ball movement on this play, and they showed their unselfishness, and then we see Butler score on the slot cut. This was actually a pretty interesting play because on the baseline drive, we see the opposite corner wasn't filled, so on some plays the baseline drift may have been the right option, but here Butler uses his great instincts to see that Morris was sinking and that he'd be open on the cut. Lastly, the Heat have had some success with the single side tag pick and roll, where they purposely, after a timeout, stick 2 players ball side in the pick and roll and 1 player weak side, instead of 2 players weak side. And what they're trying to do is isolate that weak side defender, making it tough for him to tag the roll man. And they intentionally have Hero, a shooter, as that weak side shooter. And so here, when DiVincenzo stays home on the shooter, that frees up Jones on the roll. Here's another example. We have a pick and roll to the left, and here Robinson is the weak side shooter, and he'll also come up behind the roll. This is called a shake, and this makes it tougher on Siakam, who's in that single side tag spot, to tag and recover, and sure enough, Robinson attacks the closeout well. Well, there you have it, guys. The Heat are playing a really fun brand of basketball with passing, movement, and overall smart play, and they really play to the strengths of their players. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.